Welcome to a Management Plus training webinar. My name is Kevin Sloan. I'm a certified electronic health record specialist and certified ophthalmic technician. Management Plus is an industry leader in EHR. We want to provide you with the documentation tools and the skills to use these tools proficiently. Today's training webinar is titled Meaningful Use. Let's get started. Once again, I have our favorite test and demo patient, Mr. Bob Hope, on the screen in front of us. And we have navigated to the Meaningful Use form by clicking Meaningful Use in the form tree on the left. This Meaningful Use form is consistent for the ophthalmology EHR forms and the optometry EHR forms. They are identical in every way. Some of the setup that's within the background for each of the two different template arrangements are slightly different. I will try to make reference to that whenever we enter a section that pertains to that. But otherwise, this Meaningful Use form is identical for the two. As you can see, the form is divided into two parts. Essentially, we'll refer to this as the right side and the left side. The left side starts with these grids over here with the allergies on the top. And scrolling down, you can see the bottom. Let's review each one of these in detail. The first one is the allergies grid. This is essentially a copy of what is on the meds and allergies form, if you have the optometry forms. The ophthalmology forms. If you have the optometry forms, this will be on the history and meds form, and it is just a copy. I will not review how to enter data into this, since we did that on those training webinars. This is essentially, again, just a copy. So if you enter it on the other form, it will show up here as a copy of that. Same way with the medications. For the ophthalmology forms, it's on the meds and allergies. For the optometry forms, it's on the history and meds form. Again, just a copy. If you enter it there, it will show up here. One word that should be brought forward on these in regards to the optometry forms, the history and meds, if you look carefully on that form, you'll notice that there are columns missing on the history and meds form, where here on the Meaningful Use, you will see these columns in detail. This is just set up that way only because it's just hidden to you, does not affect the overall function of these grids. It's just not visible. That was done essentially just to sort of declutter those, to make them look a little more simpler to the user when they're entering the data on those optometry forms. The problem list here below, again, is just a copy. This is found in multiple different forms when it comes to the ophthalmology template arrangement. Chief Complaint HPI, Physician Desktop, Glaucoma Flow Sheet, and actually the Meaningful Use form. For the optometry forms, it's just found on the history and meds. Again, just a copy. Procedures. For the ophthalmology forms, you will find your copy of this on the procedures form. For the optometry template arrangement, it will again be on the history and meds. Then we have the lab orders grid. I am going to review how to enter data into this because it is not found on any other form for either the ophthalmology template arrangement or the optometry. To add data is you just simply right click, lab results, add the physician as noted here in the banner, and today's date will automatically be there. You'll choose the flashlight, and let's just say we wanted to do a CBC. You'll key that in and choose the one that you want, and then press OK. You can put these other values within this. This does contain enough controls so that if you have an HL7 interface to your lab, you can have all of this data go over to your lab, and they can electronically send your values back. So clicking OK, you can see the order is there. When the values do come back from your lab, whether it's via mail or electronically, you'll want to put that value in there. Just right click, lab results, edit, and then you'll put that value within that section. Below the lab grid is the vital signs for the ophthalmology forms. This is on the past family social history, the copy of these. For the optometry, it's on the history and meds form. Again, just copies of that. For meaningful use, the pulse, respiration, and temperature is not required. Also, the follow-up plan is not. It is here in the event that CMS does decide that they need that information. So just ignore these controls here. The only ones that are required are the height, weight, and blood pressure. And on the bottom is the patient family health history. For the ophthalmology template arrangement, it is on the PFS history form. For the optometry, it is on the history and meds. Again, just a copy of that. And again, you may not see all of these columns on your copy if you have the optometry forms, but they are all here. Going back to the top on the right hand side, have the smoking and drinking history sections. For meaningful use, the only elements that are required is the smoking status, the discussed cessation, and the SNOMED code that's generated. So if you choose an option here and exit this control, it automatically changes this. It does that also on the other forms that you may have a copy of these on. These three again are the only thing that's required. The quantitative values and the date controls here are not required for meaningful use. Also, the entire drinking history section is not. These again are here just in case CMS decides that they want this information. Does not hurt if you document these values. It's just good health record documentation, but you do not have to do it specifically for meaningful use. So please don't let that confuse you when it comes to this. Again, just these three elements here at the top, and this third one is actually automatic. Let's skip down to this section where patient education resources provided to patient is documented here. This is oftentimes triggered by several other events. One is usually on your physician desktop form. If you have the ophthalmology forms, there is an icon there that launches your patient education, and it will trigger this. Also, this here for Medline and for InfoLink. It will also trigger the patient education resources provided. If you just have a checkbox, it's probably just a copy of this. So you'll fire this by one of the various other methods, and it will show this tick in this checkbox here. Patient assessed for fall risk. You can see that this has a tick in here, or otherwise referred to as a flag. For the ophthalmology template arrangement, this is on the past family social history form. There's a copy of that associated with one of your 5 clinical decision support rules. When you set that flag or the tick on that form, it again just shows up here. For the optometry forms, it's going to be just on the history and meds. The next section here, patient provided with electronic access to their health information within 4 days on, and then the clinical summary provided to patient for office visit by, and there's some options here, and then another date control. These 3 controls are essentially associated with publishing to the patient portal. So whenever you click the red X up here to publish to the portal, it will put in today's date. It will add the word portal onto this, and then today's date here as well. You will get the credit for both of those just by simply clicking that red X and turning it to a green check mark to indicate that you've published this record to the patient portal. very quick and easy. The next section has multiple controls. It starts with the checkbox patient referred from, and if you see that these two checkboxes are indented, that means they go with this as well as this lookup list control. So when you have a new patient and they're referred to your office, you'll want to click this check mark, put the physician's name here. When you do your medications reconciliation, you'll click this, and then if you're provided with a summary of care from that physician, whether it's a PDF of the narrative or you've been able to reconcile from the CCD, you'll want to click this, that you've received that. And this can be received electronically, or others would consider getting a letter in regards to this patient. The letter could be sent via snail mail. If you have that, certainly you can click this checkbox. So when you receive your patient and you're prepping your records or in advance, or if the patient comes in the office and you're just starting your record, oftentimes there is a copy of this on the ophthalmology forms. It's found on the physician wrap-up. The medications reconciliation performed is on the chief complaint HPI. There's a script button that will do it there, or on the meds and allergies, it will do it there as well. On the optometry forms, it is found on the history and meds, and there is a button to do your medication reconciliation there. The next section down below is the patient referred to. That's when you refer your patient to another specialist. It might be a glaucoma specialist, retina guy, oculoplastics, and so forth. This is essentially when you transition the patient's care to another physician. You may be co-managing for an ophthalmologist if you happen to be an optom, and you are referring them back to that, or vice versa. So essentially, you are referring this patient to another ocular care specialist. So you will click this, put the physician's name on there. Whenever you provide a summary of care, you'll click this, and this can be done via sending a PDF of the narrative or a letter. You know, it could be via snail mail, direct send. So whenever you provide a summary of care to this physician, you'll click that. If you electronically transmit this summary, you'll want to click this. This is specific to direct send or another certified system that is encrypted to the point where they can send and receive encrypted medical data. So when you send that electronically, you'll click this. The last one here, again, these are indented so they go together. This is when you get a letter back from that physician. This also pertains to communication with the patient's diabetes physician. So if you have an endocrinologist that's also working with your patient, and you are sending information back to that endocrinologist, and you have sent that patient to them, they may send you a letter back in regards to this. You'll click this check mark that you have received the report according to this referral. A good example of this is if you sent the patient to a retina specialist for treatment, they've received the treatment, and then that retina specialist has sent you a letter back or sent you some type of information back in regards to that referral. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 controls associated with this one measure. This may take a specific length of time, oftentimes a couple weeks. It may even roll over into 3 or 4 weeks, depending on when the patient was able to get into this other specialist, and then when that specialist also was able to generate a letter back to you. The next one is by itself, cataracts 20/40 or better visual acuity within 90 days following cataract surgery. Oftentimes this is found duplicated onto other forms. By default, for both the optometry and ophthalmology forms, they're not set up this way, but oftentimes they are set up where a copy of this control is located in the same place where the visual acuity controls are. If it is, again, it would just be a copy. You would set that flag there and it would show up here. Otherwise, if it's not, just simply clicking that will set that value whenever they have 20/40 or better visual acuity within 90 days after cataract surgery. This dilation control is essentially it's not essentially a copy of your dilation controls. It's the eye control is what it's pertaining to, but it does have the same ID. So if you right click and look at the ID dilation _I for both the ophthalmology and optometry forms, this does share the same ID, although the control types are different. But that's okay. Whenever you document that you've dilated the patient, on the ophthalmology forms it would be on the tech workup, on the optometry forms it would be on the workup form, then you will actually just see those values displayed here. The electronic notes and chief complaint, this is oftentimes set via a subroutine. So whenever you enter the chief complaint for the ophthalmology forms, it would be on the CC and HPI. For the optometry, it would be on the workup. This subroutine will take those values and dump those into this control once you've exited that. The remaining controls pertain to your CQM reporting. CDOD, CDOS, cup to disc ratio right, cup to disc ratio left, optic disc findings OD on OS. This is for CMS 143. You'll want to document these values here when the time is appropriate for that documentation. This has to do with an active diagnosis of primary open-angle glaucoma. If your patient has that, you'll want to document these values here. The ophthalmology forms oftentimes have CQM macros built into those. Yours may not, but oftentimes they do have the CQM macros built into that. They are usually located in the lower right hand corner of the physician desktop form, and you would launch those macros, click the button that's associated with CMS 143. There are actually 3 of those, and it would fill in these values here. The last one here on the right is for macular edema. This is for CMS 142. For the ophthalmology forms, again, the CQM macros are opened via clicking the CQM macros button on the lower right hand corner of the physician desktop form, and there are 2 buttons there for documentation of macular edema, absent or present. It also sets the values into the problem list as well. And then the last control, this is only required if you're not posting your charges via Management Plus. So your CPT codes for your exam are documented here. We do have a couple of clients that are not using the Management Plus billing module for posting charges. So if you happen to be one of these, you'll want to put your exam code there, your CPT code for that exam, so that it will be triggering your CQM macros. Not your CQM macros, but your CQM report. That concludes all of the controls on the Meaning for Use form, which means we have finished this training webinar. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to showing you another training webinar in the future.